So here's a fair question you and I have to pose ourselves in the world of SUVs. What is a BMW today? If we look at it from a sales perspective, potentially the X3, the X7, definitely the X5. But if we look at it from what enters most people's brains when they think of the porcelain roundel, they think of something small, two doors, preferably with 6 cylinders. Well, in that department, they've been kind of phoning it in over the past couple of years, but there looks to be a new sheriff in town. So I, for one, think we should take it to the track to understand if it's the real thing. Before you and I get too far down the road, we need to address the elephant in the room, which is 2 flavors of new generation BMW 2 Series Coupe on offer. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, this is a rear drive platform, which is to say a good thing. First flavor would be a 4-cylinder that's going to be 255 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Then there's this one, the one we are focusing on and the one we are driving today. That is the M240i X Drive. Now, when you hear that X Drive, that tells you all-wheel drive in BMW speak. Currently, the 6-cylinder, it's only on offer as X Drive. Maybe that'll change next year, maybe it won't. This one, the engine we've driven in many other BMWs, as well as a couple Toyotas, 382 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. Okay, now that you and I understand both turbocharged powertrains, let's focus on the output figures, starting with the fuel economy. And here the US government calls this for 23, 32, 26 combined. Not horrible when you consider the output of that engine. However, in my time driving it before I've switched on the camera, I've noticed the gas gauge going down very quickly. First, I thought it was me, but then the trip computer is telling me that I'm doing somewhere between 20 and 21 mpg around town. So I did a bit of digging, and I learned it's got a small gas tank, 13.7 gallon capacity. I guess it's just me, but I'm used to German cars having somewhere between 18 and 21 gallon fuel tanks. But let's put that aside and focus on the output figures that matter to us most, and that will be the performance figures. And here, 0 to 60, incredibly respectable, 4.1 seconds. VMAX, 130 miles an hour or 155 miles an hour. We will answer that in the options game. And now that we have the name, rank, and serial number out of the way, let's focus on some rather unusual changes that are applied to a small rear-wheel drive BMW coupe. Namely, it's larger. When you first look at it, you can't help but notice the design. It's a sharper version of the car that came before it. You really can't mistake it for anything else but a 2 Series Coupe, or really any other 2-door BMW coupe that came before it over many, many, many years. But really what it's hiding is a number of dimensional changes. Like, for example, the length of the vehicle, 3.5 inches longer. The wheelbase, 2 inches longer. Then the width, that's increased by 2.6 inches. And that's hiding the biggest change, and that's the track width. In the front, it's 2.5 inches wider. In the rear, it's 2.4 inches wider. Now, normally, I like to wait until we get in the car to tell you the weight of the vehicle, but I just changed all these dimensions on you, so how does that impact the weight? 3,871 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 1,756 kilograms. Now that brings us to the obvious question, how much do those extra 2 cylinders cost us, at least in weight? Well, it's about 350 pounds. With that, back on the track. Sport Plus mode. Oh, wow. Comes alive about 4,000 RPM. There's a switch that just comes on with this engine. Usually with this 3-liter turbocharged inline 6, we've experienced this thing about 3,500 RPM, but in this mode on this track, there is something about the magic of 4,000 RPM. But really what's happening here, or the thing I would say you notice the most, is the transmission. God, this is a wonderful track, at least for this kind of a car. If you remember the M5 CS, it needs a little bit longer legs for that kind of a car. And with this transmission, it's the same ZF 8-speed that was in that M5 CS we've driven before, but really what's going on here, they've programmed it differently. So instead of it being You feel like it's a torque converter automatic in the M5 or other BMWs we've driven. This one, you almost feel like it's a dual clutch. They've changed the programming completely, and it changes the way this thing behaves almost, because the character really, it's a combination of the sounds and the shifts. I would go so far as to saying the shifts here perhaps a bit faster when you're in Sport Plus mode that mimic what a dual clutch does. So for the avoidance of doubt, it's not that the M5 CS or other derivations or flavors of this 8-speed are slow in their shifting. BMW, they're unusually good with the programming of this transmission we've experienced in other cars like Jaguars. But here, they've changed the speed as well as the characteristics that go around it, the personality. So it sounds different and it feels different as you're changing gears. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the options game with today's contestant, the potential reincarnation of the ultimate driving machine, at least in two-door coupe form. This one, the 2022 BMW M240i X Drive, for a base price of $48,550. Then there's that color. Practically every one of them they had at the track was purple. They call it Thunder Night Metallic. Now, purple, it ain't my bag. However, this is not a bad shade on this car. The problem is the black leather interior with the blue stitching. The blue stitching is good, however, there is no contrast with this very bold color choice. I would say with a saddle leather interior or something else that breaks up the very dark color would really make this color pop. So I wouldn't pay the $550 and then $1,450 for the black leather interior. And we press on to the driver's assistance package. This is the adaptive cruise control, the 360-degree round view monitor, stuff like that. $1,450, almost the same price as the leather. Then we press on to the Shadowline trim. Now, in the M240i, the Shadowline trim is fitted as standard. This just gives you more Shadowline trim, which is black trim, at least translated from BMW E's. However, notice the grille. This one comes fitted with a cerium gray trim as standard. Now, you would want that because if you look deeply into the grille of this thing, it doesn't have the usual BMW slats that are sometimes chrome and sometimes black. Here, they're vents that open and close and have 10 different positions to allow airflow into the radiator. Neat trick. I would want to really show that off, so I'd want the cerium gray, not the Shadowline trim, which is $400. Then there's the premium package. That's the heated steering wheel, the heated seat, and the head-up display, very important, $2,750. Then we come back to the question about the VMAX that we posed sort of at the beginning of this episode, 130 miles an hour or 155 miles an hour. Well, one would need the cooling and horsepower package. That changes the wheel and tire package. These things are available with 18 inches or 19 inches. 19 inches are fitted as standard on the M240i's. However, this one has the black trim in the wheel and different tires. That brings about the 155 miles an hour VMAX, and I'd say it's well worth $2,400. Then we go to the aluminum trim on the dashboard. Does look very nice here. I kind of would like the saddle leather with perhaps a wood trim that has a satin finish, so I'd forego the $150 even though that's a bargain. Then we get into the realities of 2021 and a chip shortage. There are some car manufacturers like Ford that have Ford Bronco Sports unfinished sitting outside of a factory in Michigan. BMW, Mercedes, they do something different. They take away things that are fitted as standard. Like, for example, the lumbar support on the passenger side, they delete that and give you back $175, which you could use to pay for the aluminum trim. Then they also take away the width adjustment on the passenger side. That gives you $100 back, so you're kind of ahead there. Then we have to add the lumbar support adjustment, $350. Then the Harman Kardon sound system. This, it's kind of a bargain in the premium audio world. It sounds closer to a Burmester, but it's not $4,000, it's $875. And then the only other item you and I would need to add would be the destination, not von München, Deutschland, and not even from Europe. Rather, this is manufactured in San Luis Potosi, Mexico. Entschuldigung for my pronunciation, eso sí que es. Either way, the destination is $995 for a total retail price of $59,645. Admittedly, this is a downright quick car, but it's more about the driving dynamics here. And the thing you notice immediately when you get behind the wheel of this thing, especially in a situation like this, you feel it's sharper than the two it replaces. Now, a couple of things, recap. In the rear, it still has the multi-link suspension, but in the front, it's still a strut. However, it's a double jointed strut. So the concept there is to make it more stable. The overall structure is stronger in this than it is in the car it replaces. And you notice that in turn-in, you notice that as you're pushing the car. Now, what does that mean in practice for you and I? Well, the steering, the feedback is good, it's direct, but most importantly, the weight is about perfect for this type of car. Then there are the brakes. Here it's the M Performance brakes. I've told you about different brake packages from Porsches, from BMWs, from AMGs. In a lot of cases, I would rarely go for the carbon ceramic rotors or some sort of special option like they have the middle of the road option in the Porsche. BMW is probably about the best when it comes to brakes, at least the middle of the road option with a steel rotor. These, it makes you say to yourself, okay, I can go. We were just doing 115 miles an hour, and I feel total confidence doing a little trail braking going through this. It's something unusual in a non-carbon ceramic, non-Porsche surface-coated brake world. That's something BMW is probably about the best at. And in a car that's, let's call this the Goldilocks in weight, you need that kind of brake to make the overall package work together. And so we arrive at the moment of truth. Ultimate driving machine, or yet another phoned-in facsimile of what used to be the ultimate driving machine. And here, it's the real thing. We already knew the engine was magnificent. Now it is contained within the right-sized packaging. I would argue the width is what changes everything here. I would even go so far as to saying I like the way it looks. And here, pictures don't really do it justice. One needs to see it in the right color in person to get what they changed here. Which brings us to the wish list. And here I don't have much. Yes, they most likely will give us an M2 CS, which probably will be more magnificent than this. But my ask is something very simple. Two-wheel drive, meaning rear drive and a manual transmission with this engine. Maybe even take some weight out of it. That's all I'm asking for. And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And once again, I would love to humbly request your help with the algorithm. What does that mean? Yes, click subscribe and notifications, but more importantly, clicking like, because only like 2 or 3% of you do that. And of course, sharing these episodes with all your friends on your socials. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.